So a question I've always been asked a lot, especially in recent years, Frank, how come you don't shoot with a red dot? Well, story's kind of long-winded, but I'll be happy to go through it. So one of the things I was always taught from a young age with shooting is, of course, in the beginning I was taught front sight, rear sight, focus on the front sight, align it with your target, and ease the trigger back, etc. Then I was taught focus on your target and align your sights. Shift your focus from the front sight to the target, what you're actually shooting at, and aim that way. Now here is one of my Glock slides. As you can see right there, that front sight is a bright orange dot, okay? Long story short, that right there is my red dot. That's the only way to explain it, is I line the sight up, but instead of focusing on the dot, I'm looking past the dot at what I'm shooting at. And of course you see the iron sights in your peripheral vision. You're still able to make out front and rear sight, but I'm focused on the target. And that's the part where a lot of people get mixed up about. You're not always, with a red dot, you're not supposed to be focusing on your dot. You're supposed to be looking past it at your target. And of course, one of the reasons that I use either white dot rear, or in this case like blacked out tritium, and a bright front sight is because, like I said, the red dot, in my mind, when I use an iron sight, the front sight is my red dot, and I cover whatever it is that I'm shooting at with the sight alignment lined up. So another way to illustrate this is, here's an example. You got right there, rear sights and a front sight. I don't have orange, so sue me. Red right there. That becomes my red dot, and whatever I'm aiming at, as I maintain this sight picture, and I put that red dot on whatever I'm targeting, okay? Maintaining that sight picture. Now the cool thing about red dot, here's two examples, is obviously you have sometimes the sight is just too tall and your iron sights don't co-witness. All right, whatever, doesn't matter. If that's how you set your gun up, or how you choose to set your gun up, fine. Do what works for you. Other people have some form of co-witness. For example, my gun, the gun that I had right here with the Trigicon SRO on it, the night vision sights that I have, plus the direct mounted SRO, they are even lower than this example. Like, that's a lower 1/3 co-witness example, and I'm showing it here as if you just drop down and place the dot on the tip of the front sight. But honestly, the way you're supposed to use the red dot with your irons is to, like combat sights, you're supposed to cover just like that. You're supposed to do that. Put it right on your front sight, like covering your front sight. The Glock here, instead of lower 1/3, it's more like lower 5th or even lower 6th. Like, they're barely visible, but if the dot goes down, I can still use the irons through the bottom window of the direct mounted SRO. Whatever works for you. A lot of people get caught up in the weeds on this, and the thing is, whether you're an iron sight shooter and you choose to do the whole combat sight with a bright colored front dot, if that works for you and you cover your intended target with that sight picture, great. Or if you decide to use a red dot and you use either one of these options, whatever works for you. But like I said, the whole reason I never used red dots for a long time, I was using red dots. I've used red dots on rifles and whatnot, and my very first experience with a red dot on a pistol was on a some kind of 1911, but it was a frame-mounted skeletonized red dot mount that mounted to the frame, and then it held the red dot like right here. So it was out of the way of the ejection port, but it was on the gun physically, you know, here. And when the slide moved, it didn't interrupt it. And then, of course, we started mounting red dots here on guns, just like here's my example. Started direct mounting red dots. All right. Yeah. The technology works. It's great. I've used many red dots over the years with pistols. Before I actually chose my go-to, or my favorite, the Trijicon SRO, I was borrowing, a friend of mine had a bunch of Glock slides lying around milled for different sites. And I decided, all right, well, I'm going to borrow them for a little while and just test them out, try them out. I shot them all the ones like that are kind of current at least. There's a few obviously new ones that I may or may not have had experience with, but listen, the red dot works. It's great. Red dot doesn't make you a better shooter. It just makes you able to process information quicker. And when I say that, I mean instead of lining up sights and putting it on a target, you're putting a dot on a target and pulling the trigger. So which one sounds quicker? Sights lined up on a target, pull the trigger, or dot on the target, pull the trigger. Instead of having to worry about the front and rear sight, lining them up, keeping them true to each other, and then pulling the trigger. Yeah, that can take a lot more time if you're not competent at it. But if you practice, you can take the same shooter behind the identical gun with a red dot and without. And if they train with iron sights, someone like myself, they train iron sights and they train with a red dot, they're just as fast. Doesn't matter too much, but the shooter will say it feels faster. Oh yeah, probably it is feeling faster because all you're doing is placing one thing on a target and then pulling the trigger versus lining up two things, keeping them together, pulling a trigger. I mean, that is super fast. And what's cool too about a red dot, for those of you who may not know, the red dot doesn't have to be centered in this window. The red dot can be anywhere as long as you see it in this window and your gun is zeroed. I mean, the red dot can be in this bottom corner here, but it's on my target. Guess what? Yep, still going to be accurate. That's the cool thing about red dots. They also call them reflex sights. Back in the older days, a reflex sight was another term they would use. So that's all I really have for you on that. Frank, why did it take you so long to adopt red dots? Because I'm picky, man. I'm really picky. I've used EOTech, Aimpoint, Hollow Sun, red dots on rifles. Back in the day, old Trijicons too. Hi, Sadie. My dog is walking around. She wants to see what I'm up to. So Sadie says hi, everybody. Yeah. I've literally early exposure to it. I just never really needed it. And then one day I was like, you know what? I have my Glock's Norso slide cut for RMR direct cut. And I was deciding, well, do I want the RMR? Do I want the SRO? And then the RCR came out, and I was like, well, shit. You know what, though? I ended up going with the SRO just because that tubular shape, it reminded me of a Hollow Sun and Aimpoint, whatever the hell you want to call it. They work great. God, we got a lot of wasps here. That's not good. Yeah, so that's the long-winded version of why I took so long to adopt red dots. And in reality, it's like, yeah, all right, I was using red dots, borrowing them from other people's guns and people's slides, spare slides, trying them out, man. Now, do I need them? No, absolutely not. 9 times out of 10, when I do carry my guns, I choose to carry a gun with iron sights still because it's less of a snag hazard for me. And the way I set up my holsters here, I like the ride height. Here's the ulti clip, by the way. I like to get the grip of the gun pretty close to my belt line. It helps keep the gun from printing less. Obviously, let's say your belt is here and the gun grip is right here. All right, yeah, that's pretty easy to conceal. But let's say you put a red dot on your holster and your ride height is here. All right, well, that's more of the gun kick that's capable of kicking out this way, that way, whatever way, if you adjusted your ride height so that the holster was higher to make room for that red dot. So with my preferred holster setup, I like to be able to keep it super close to the belt line. And as you can see, I mean, this just barely fits. If I were to put the iron sight gun on here, I can tilt the gun if I feel like I need it. I can wear it tilted. With the red dot, the belt is running here. I'm kind of stuck with this straight up and down, and that prints a little bit more. So that's one of the main reasons why I choose to use iron sights on my carry gun predominantly. Do I carry this gun with a red dot? Yeah. Especially if I'm working at the range and I just feel like carrying it that way, whatever. Or if it's winter time and I've got a nice flannel or a jacket over it, sure, by all means. It's always easier to conceal a gun with in winter, as they say, right? Well, no, the answer is good belt, good holster, and we'll get into that at a later time. So yeah, just remember, like everything else in shooting, whether you decide to use your iron sights, like this style of iron sight, or you decide to run a red dot, it's all preference at the end of the day. It's what works for you. Have a good one. Got nothing else for you today.